Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I met with Mark Newsome, IBM Consulting Vice President and Senior Partner at the Prospect House in Washington, D.C. Mark and I spent a lot of time together in the federal sector, where he has done an extraordinary job in leading IBM's Veterans Affairs and Defense Health business. As you'll hear, Mark's prior service in the U.S. Army and his continued dedication to our veterans provides an interesting insight into humble and thoughtful leadership. In the interview, we discussed the journey from his childhood in Prentiss, Mississippi to Washington, D.C., thought leadership, and the foundation needed for success. Mark has been a great mentor to me and many others. His mantra always remains service before self, humility, and excellence. I would encourage any military personnel, veteran, or potential hiring manager to consider Mark's thoughts and advice on veterans making a transition to a corporate job. I hope you enjoy. Good evening, Mark. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm well, Troy. It's a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I really appreciate you coming out here to the Prospect House here in Washington, D.C. and being on my show. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Mark, we've had an unbelievable last 2 years together. You've been kind of a partner to me. And when I say partner, going to market and going after the market together. And then you've been a mentor to me coming into IBM, a Fortune 50 company. And you're the first executive from IBM that I've had on the show. And so I really wanted to thank you for coming on and look forward to our discussion tonight.
Honored to be here.
Yeah. So, to kind of help the listeners kind of get an idea of, our starting point together is then we're going to kind of work through a lot of different areas. The IBM, the way it's set up is there's the account side, which is a side that might have accounts like DHS, Veterans, State Department, all of those. And then the service lines where the consulting people are. Then in this discussion, I'm on the consulting side within finance and supply chain, and you lead the industry team for defense, health, and Veterans Affairs. So, and I think what I thought might be helpful before we kind of get into a little bit of your background and story, but you've had some tremendous successes in the short time that I've been there that I've seen and picked up. I'd really like for you to maybe just to give a little bit of an idea to the listeners of some of the things that you've been able to do as and to help our veterans.
Absolutely. One of our crowning achievements is the automation work that we're doing today to help our veterans, to where we're infusing ourselves in the throughput of claims processing, starting with mail, and then also with benefits determination. And in some of that work, we've been able to reduce processing time on the mail side from some 20 days to around 15 minutes.
Wow.
On the automation side and benefits delivery, we've been able to reduce that processing time from 4 months to 1 day. And those things sort of kind of speak for themselves. We also run the VA's human resources system. All 550,000 employees and workers without compensation sit on our platform, and we process the personnel actions for them every single day. We also doing some things out inside of our third-party administrator world with one of the third-party administrators in helping them to provide infrastructure and platform hosting for the tools that they're using for care that's delivered in the community. And most recently, care that's delivered in the community for the active duty side as well. So we run that entire continuum, or have responsibility for that entire continuum of active duty and veterans, the hosting up under the third-party administrator for those veterans and service members that are getting care in the community.
Yeah, it's interesting in your position, actually leading the account and having the account relationships. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the expectations of being in that role and kind of who your peers are in the VA and kind of how you have to really kind of get a beat and see the demand signals and making sure that we're, as a corporation, that we're focused on the right things there?
Absolutely. My peers inside the Veterans Affairs space is the C-suite. Mm-hmm. It's also Congress, right? The stakeholders that make the decisions on behalf of veterans and service members. And that's who I engage with as a C-suite level. Sometimes that operational level is what I also engage with, the GS staff that is there, the permanent employees. But it ranges directly from the C-suite to the SESs down to the GS-15s and 14s inside the agency.
Right. And then within IBM, I like to be selfish and say it's all about consulting, but we are a consulting and technology company, and it's two different parts of our company, but you actually represent the total brand. So a lot of times, you are the voice of technology and of the consulting process. Did you find that an advantage for IBM, or do you think that that's a tough bill to be able to sell both sides of that to a client like the VA?
No, I think it's easy. We've long been known and have repute as a dominant juggernaut in the technology space, right? Software products, hardware products, storage, and those types of things. Bringing that consultancy to that aspect now allows us to provide the full continuum of services to our clients, and in particular, the VA. So they don't just buy the software licenses or whatever that sits on a shelf and then they try to install themselves. But we're able to wrap services around that so that we take on that managed service or that as a service model. So what they're looking to achieve from a performance outcomes metrics perspective, they're able to get there because they shift the risk onto us to perform at a certain level, accordance with the service level agreements that they may place and affix upon us.
Great. Yeah, I just thought it was important, I think, before we kind of get through the rest of the interview, to really talk about the significance of the job. And I think the other part where you and I have this common charge is we're both veterans of the military. It's unfortunately, and I'm giving you a hard time. You want to talk a little bit about your Army service? I'm a Navy guy, but we've been able to break bread together.
Is there another service outside of the Army? I didn't know that. Yes, 25 years, right? I spent in uniform, predominance of that as a chief financial officer for Army hospitals. So I got firsthand experience on a daily basis of what our soldiers, sailors, and airmen were coming back and seeking in terms of healthcare benefits and services from the government that they were serving. No more noble cause than to don the uniform for our nation. It's remarkable to be a part of America's and the world's greatest fighting force, and to serve with distinction inside of those roles, and then to come to the other side, leveraging all of that valuable insights, training, and personal experience to deliver back to them the care, benefits, and services they deserve.
Yeah. Well, Mark, again, thank you for your service. And like I said, I do find a fellowship in that, and being able to do not only the fact that you're a veteran, but you're able to kind of turn it into providing a service. And, I'll just kind of foot stomp on, I remember when I was the CFO for DHS, and I had a very positive experience with IBM. And so somebody said, hey, you really need to go over and see what we're doing at the Veterans Administration. You were already at the IBM. I was not. And I went over there, and, being a veteran and knowing veterans that would put requests in to get benefits could, like you said, 4 to 6 months. Using, all these processes to basically automate the front end process, using AI and intelligence, machine language to do a process, and then coming out with predictive recommendations based on theoretical and real life empirical data, to take that to such a short time, and then the backlog just decrease. I will be honest, like my decision to what company did I want to potentially work for when I left DHS is, I think I could have went to one of the larger consultancies, but I think the fact that we have consulting and technology and that type of capability, I think that was a niche that I just, it was the double threat there. So it was really impressive. Mark, what I'd like to do now is kind of step a little bit higher level and talk a little bit about your origin story to give the listeners a little bit of a peek of where you started and they've just heard of where you're at, which is incredible. And so the story, I think, when they hear and how inspirational it is, could you do that just for a moment?
Absolutely. I'm a true country boy from deep in the middle of Mississippi, a small town called Prentiss, about 45 minutes away from Jackson, Mississippi. For those of you who know the capital of Mississippi, grew up on a farm. We did everything from picking peas to cucumbers to peppers to greens to farming cows to hogs, chickens, the whole 9 yards. So the first 18 years of my life was doing that on the farm. Our only summer job, I tell people, was on my dad's farm. You know, we didn't have the liberty to go work at the local grocery store or do some of the other, other jobs. But it was in that environment, living in that environment on a daily basis without the option to not work, right? There was no choice of whether you worked or not. You were going to work. And I think in that environment is where I learned first my problem solving, because you don't always have everything that you need on the farm. And maybe you're out in the middle of a 100-acre field and you need to figure it out to keep the tractor going, to make sure the crop gets in, to make sure in the blazing sun you're picking, what you need to pick, or fighting off snakes, bees, anything else like that. And I think some of that is where I honed my first skills in problem solving that has paid dividends throughout my career, whether it was a private in the military, an officer in the military, or an executive at corporate America.
Yeah, that path, you finally, when you get to a certain point and you decide you're going to leave Prentiss, can you talk about that and when you kind of decided it's time to join the military?
Absolutely. It was 2 weeks after graduation from high school. A little known secret that most people don't know, but I had gotten accepted to the Air Force Academy, albeit came a week later than when I was ready to leave the farm and had went down and raised my right hand with the recruiter. And so was not able to seize that opportunity for the Air Force Academy, but college and higher degree of education was definitely, after I turned 18, left the farm, was definitely on my radar. Yep. It was not an option. I was getting off the farm. And so 2 weeks afterwards, I left and did basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then went on from there to AIT at Fort Lee, Virginia. And then, lo and behold, they sent me as far away from Mississippi as they possibly could to Germany.
Wow.
And 6 years there, loved it, coming up through the ranks as a private, then specialist, and then junior NCO, enjoying the time in Germany, learning more and more about discipline, organization, teamwork, and driving to an end state.
Yeah. That story, I had a similar path as, you get out of high school and you realize, you really need to change it up. You need to kind of see what else is out there, and then it opens your eyes up, and, you never really kind of look back per se. So it, very encouraging. And then once you're in the Army, what's interesting, and I have the benefit of knowing you, and so we've talked a lot, and inside and outside of work. You've ended up, you and I kind of come into a similar path. You end up being a CFO within the Army, and then as you did that, you hit some obstacles. You're fast climbing, and then you had some breaks. And would you mind talking about that? Because that kind of gets it set up to kind of where, then you eventually transition in 2015 to IBM.
Yeah, if I could caveat it in this one word, and that would be resiliency. In like fashion as originally intending to go off to college or Air Force Academy, and that didn't pan out due to my obligation and then being far away and, quite frankly, enjoying Germany. The resiliency, but my North Star was always to get back to that college education. And I decided that, after 5.5 years, that I would then start applying. And my first commander in Germany was slow to approve the packet. And so when I got to Fort Lewis, Washington at the beginning of '92, I gave my German commander roughly a week to respond or take action, and he didn't. So I pivoted to my commander then at Washington State at Fort Lewis. And I'm thankful that I was blessed to have a commander and a battalion commander, even though just meeting me for a couple of weeks, leaned in with full support to support my package. And 6 months later, I was gone and off to North Carolina A&T State University on a full 4-year scholarship.
Wow. Yeah, and then after you got your degree and you started the finance part of your background, can you talk a little bit about that and how you ended up in Washington, D.C.?
Absolutely. My undergrad was accounting. From there, I went on to serve in various positions of increasing responsibility as chief financial officer throughout the Army Medical Department. And in approximately 2010, I was selected for a nominative position on the Surgeon General staff to come and be a congressional liaison. And that brought me to Washington, a place that I had vowed I would never come and spend a tour. But that ended up being sort of kind of God's plan for my life, to be there to get those skills, dealing with Capitol Hill and Congress. Did that for 2 years and then got selected by the incoming next Surgeon General to move forward and be the Congressional Budget Liaison. So the single individual between Congress and the Army Medical Department for about a $13 billion portfolio of Army Medical Milcon, Army Medicine, and also Wounded Warrior Care and medical research. And so from there, then is what finished that off about 4.5, 5 years. And IBM asked me to come and lead a business unit for them.
Right. Yeah, no. And so 2015. And I think just recently you celebrated your anniversary.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well, now that we've kind of established your journey and your path into IBM, I wanted to pivot a little bit to kind of two topic areas. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of your foundation for success. And then I also wanted to talk for a few minutes about your thoughtful leadership process and kind of things that were out there that we've kind of come across together and I've seen. Within the foundation for success, it was interesting is that, you being eminent here in the federal market, you write and publish and you're out there presenting stuff. And so I stole something that you said out there. And, you talked about like kind of your approach to success is, looking at your objectives of discipline, respect, decision-making, and problem solving. And I was just kind of curious if, you could put it in perspective. How do you get ready when you come into something new to define success, and how do you then put it in motion? If you wouldn't mind talking about that for a moment.
Absolutely. And I think those are my foundations for success, that discipline, the respect, the decision-making, and problem solving. I would probably put as a preface to all of those is my faith. That has driven and guided me throughout my entire life and career, all of the time from spending, those years as enlisted and 25 years in uniform when that was not my first choice to be a soldier. But coming into a new job, Rod Goodman was one of my mentors early on in my career when I moved over to start being chief financial officer. And as you know, in the military, they move you from position to position of increasing grade and responsibility. And he said something to me as a lieutenant that really stuck with me. And he said, you got to know what you want to do before you get into a job, right? Because you're in there for 2 years. And if you take 90 days or 100 days or 6 months to figure it out, you've already lost the time to do it. And so every job that I take, I lean in and I do a quick assessment, study it very intently ahead of time to know what impact do I want to make before I take the slot. There's an old wise saying that write a vision and make it plain. And so I come in with two things, a leadership philosophy and a vision. All right. So I want my staff to sort of kind of know who they're getting. What are my core values? What are my pet peeves? What am I expecting of the team? What should they expect of me? So I come in the door delivering those things first and then establishing a vision. And a vision, you establish, and until it's achieved, you really don't change it. You stick with it. And that's exactly what's played out here at IBM. Came in, established myself with my leadership philosophy, established a vision, and then corralled the team through unity of effort to drive towards it. And so when we say discipline, respect, decision-making, and problem-solving, that's what we mean in identifying what mark do I want to leave at the end of the day when I finish this duty tour of assignment.
Mark, when you go through and you put your vision together, something that I notice being in the consulting for so long is that a lot of our peers will kind of encapsulate what the company's goals are. I mean, it was very clear when I came into IBM what I needed to do in the eyes of the definition of an executive here. And sometimes it's hard to separate, like, what are the company's goals and what I need to achieve, and then what are my personal goals. And from your perspective, I think you believe you can do both. And do you see that as an issue too with some of the folks that come in, or do you have any tips or thoughts of how people can overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to identify what's noise and what's real. And that's with any organization, whether it's the military or corporate America or nonprofit, right? There's a lot of noise in the system. You have to be skilled with that 6th or 7th sense to identify what is the real common thread that we're trying to achieve. For example, in the role that I lead today, that common thread for my responsibilities right now is, at the end of the day, to deliver better healthcare benefits and services for our veterans. Everything else is a means to an end to get that. And as long as we're focused on that end goal and end state, the byproduct is then the company is made whole. Mm-hmm. And so, as opposed to in reverse, I'm focused on metrics and things like that. I never really focus on what makes veterans better, have better health outcomes, get the benefits that they deserve. Then I'm missing the mark, right? And if I stay focused on that, then the byproduct of the company's goals come along with that. So what is my end customers? What is their mission? What are they looking to achieve? And then the byproduct for the company's goals 100% are met.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely is the right way of looking at it. I think too, something that I noticed when I was doing research to even make sure I would kind of add to your story more than what you've put out there in the press is, your personal standards to the way you conduct yourself. It's tough. The higher level you are, the more people are focusing on you and how the leader reacts to stuff. And, you and I've, even in our short 2 years, have been through some pretty interesting times. And, the thing that I've always appreciated about your temperament and the way that you do this, it's mature, it's sobering, it's methodical, and it's calm. And I think from the stories you and I've talked about outside of work, I think a lot of that, may have come from your upbringing with your parents and your dad. Did you talk about that just for a moment?
Absolutely. That's where that resiliency comes in, right? You're up in a 100-degree barn trying to stack hay, mm-hmm. right? And you don't know what you're going to see when you get up in there because you haven't been up in there. You're most assured to find, once you get up there, some snakes or some really bad, rotten, spoiled eggs, mm-hmm. but you can't come out of it. Mm-hmm. You have to own the environment when you're there. And so a lot of that came from that resiliency and that determination in those types of environments, because the alternative was go back and meet dad and mom. And that was not a good idea. Right. But adding to that, I think I would add in regards to getting to that point of humble confidence, a steady hand, a calm spirit, is an ever commitment to self-discovery of oneself. We're all familiar with the Johari's window, right? And so opening up that box in the top left that says what I know about myself and what others know about me, all right? And so that is something that I ascribe to, that I've spent my lifetime of discovering self through the various positions that I've held, through the things that I do out in the community, and the things that I do in other places that doesn't necessarily directly impact the job, but discovering self, knowing who you are as a leader, having that humble confidence, and then delivering that into the environment to drive great impact.
Great. Yeah. And I think this would be probably a good part to transition then to thoughtful leadership. And, as we kind of go through, just an example that I wanted to share. You and I were at a recent event with IBM. the team established and really achieved a tremendous success. And IBM did something that we really hadn't done a whole lot of, at least since I've been here. They're like, we would like you to have a dinner for them and recognize them. And I know a little bit more probably behind the scenes than most, but you also were pretty forceful in making sure that went down, and our leaders were super supportive. But it was interesting as I went through at the end of the time, yourself, myself, one of our colleagues, Jason Pro, we took a picture. I sent it off to some people saying, "Hey, this is somebody that I work with. I'm really proud to work with this guy and these two people." And at the bottom, one of our colleagues responded, Mark Newsome, service before self, humility and excellence, the Newsome brand. And I'm thinking, does this guy have a brand now? So anyway, Mark, I think the thoughtful leadership is like, even you're putting on something to really commemorate the people that helped you get there. Some people in the corporation might look and say it's the leader that got him there. You would never say that. And I just thought, I call that thoughtful leadership. And I thought that, kind of maybe if you would talk a little bit about the perspective of thoughtful leadership and maybe some of the elements that make up that thoughtful leadership.
Yeah, certainly. I think you've captured, self and humility and excellence as part of that. But I would also say that people are our greatest assets. And the minute that we forget that, we lose the battle. I like to consider myself a multi-domain, multi-environment leader. I've worked at GE. I've worked at UPS. I've worked in the Army. I ran my own business. I worked with Congress. I've worked with academia. And now I'm working, here in corporate America. And so multi-domain, multi-environment leader. What does that take? It takes a sense of maturity, a sense of self-awareness as a leader, right? You have to have, absolutely, to operate in all of those environments, a high EQ, or emotional intelligence. The leaders that don't have that are not able to operate in the various environments, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. For example, they could never be, a military person, mm-hmm. right? Or they could never be both a military person and, a business owner, right? You have to have absolutely high EQ. High EQ listens to their team, right? Not from a perspective of garnering ultimate consensus before they make decisions, but they gather all the information from the experts. We have distinguished engineers on my team, solution architects, others that have been in this business for a long time. It would be irresponsible for me not to listen to them. You have to strive to achieve unity of effort. In the military, we call that unity of command. So whether we're going to fight a war, litigate something on the battlefield with Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force now, Coast Guard, mm-hmm. Marines, you have to achieve unity of effort or unity of command. If you don't bring the team together to achieve that, then you never accomplish the mission if you're broken internally. You have to establish and identify an azimuth for the team to focus on. They have to have something to drive towards, right? And the leader must be the biggest champion for that. They can't obviate that responsibility. And in doing so, you're achieving that unity of effort. You have high EQ, and you can create a formidable team that accomplishes great things by doing so.
To build a team, a lot of times, like I said, I'll just share the experience. You come into IBM, when you came in 2015, I sit back and I see the successes that you've had within your business unit based on probably corporate measurements and the benefits that you've brought to veterans to be able to help them. And, I see your peers, the way IBM is set up. There's somebody that's similar role that you have for DHS and for State Department and fill in the blank all the way through all of the departments. And that's the way we're structured. And I think that it's, as you kind of go through and lay out, your path, and you kind of look at, who's with me as a team, how do you build your relationships? I think the way that you kind of communicate to that team, I get to see really multiple types of approaches by each of those leaders. All of them are awesome. I'll just put it out there.
Absolutely.
So everybody has just different approaches. And, one of the things that I noticed when, I started really getting active with you and a lot of activity there in the team is, it was simple things that you did, like you said, in thoughtful leadership. I get on your cadence call every week, and we go through the biggest things going on at VA, and all of the accounts do that. And when you're on the consulting side, you have a vested interest because you are really the intel of what's going on in VA because of your C-suite relationships, and then your staff that has commensurate relationships at the right places. That call is the most important half hour for me strategically on how I'm going to spend my time for the next couple of weeks if I hear something coming or something is sparked. And so, but it's never you talking. It's the way you've set it up. You kick it off. You usually, I'm giving you a hard time. You usually have an Olympic analogy of strapping up and making sure we're playing even in practice. But then, you very quickly hand it off. And I just think that's interesting because it takes a lot of faith when you know that the types of pressures that you and I are under to hit certain goals that the company has. It almost doesn't feel sometimes like you can leave things to chance, but you do. You have faith in that process, and the results show for that. There is something to that. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you embolden your team and your philosophy?
Yeah, I think teams have to be empowered, right? It can't be always that the leader knows everything, right? And when I first got here, I didn't have all what I needed, right? And oftentimes from a military analogy, we take what we have and we're going to execute a plan to win the war or litigate the battle. And so in doing so, I would get to my status calls and they would be asking me for what is the next step, right? And I felt that was just so wrong. Because coming from a military background, everyone at the base is a firefighter, right? They are a infantryman or infantrywoman. They can pick up the rifle if their comrade is down and continue to fight. And so what I have done throughout my career and what I did here to sort of kind of mitigate that and make sure everyone on the team knows exactly what I know is to establish repeatable processes, cascade down the process to get a deal from identification to delivery. And everyone on my team knows it. And that's the chart I use so that I'm not the one, the oracle with all the knowledge, but that everyone on my teams knows what it takes to get a deal throughout the door. So I have to empower them. I have to establish repeatable processes. And I have to challenge the greater good within them. And that's where that Olympic analogy comes in. You never see an Olympian show up to the Olympics to practice. Mm-hmm. They're only there to perform. If they set foot on that track or in the field games or anything that they're doing, the pool, they're there to perform. The practice is already had. Our individuals and our people and our team, they're well trained, they're certified, they're educated. We empower them with knowledge and enablement. So I'm looking to tease out all of that to its highest potential to come to bear for the job on a daily basis. And that's what you see play out, is empowering them to talk about the deals that they're working on, as opposed to me rambling and talking about each and every deal and being the most knowledgeable about it. If they can talk about it and talk about the specifics of it, what they're doing to drive it forward, that's like putting their stamp on a piece of furniture. They have buy-in and they're wedded to the process to see it through.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark, on that. The last piece of the thoughtful leadership that I wanted to talk about was eminence. And, part of your thoughtful leadership, and you and I've, we've recently even had an experience together without going into too much detail, but it's interesting, is a dilemma that we have when you get to a certain level, especially in consulting. It is about the team. Like, we don't don't get me wrong. We don't directly add that value. Our teams are doing it. And I think whether, I've started businesses, I've been a mayor, or doing all that, it's like you really are representing the embodiment of work of the team members are only as good as the weakest link, to use a Navy term. I thought I'd throw that one in. But imminence in our level 2 is we also need to go out there and make pronouncements and establish confidence in the people that we deal with in the C-suite and within the market and within our own leadership, to show that, hey, we've got command of the area that you've been, gracious enough to put us in this position. So, reinforcing that. And so the question I have for you is the dilemma is, how do you distinguish between, trying to build up the team and then being selfish sometimes to have to claw some of that credit back to be, quote, imminent, and the downside if you don't do it?
Certainly. I think we all have to make a splash and create a bow wave in the areas that we've been assigned, right? It's just an inherent responsibility as part of being a leader and as part of being an expert in that role. One of my statements that I put when I wrote my package to go back to school from private and cross over to officer was that I wanted to go back so I could maximize my potential. And so each of us have, those God-given talents and abilities, education, training, and experience to bring to bear. So we have something to say about the very topics and subjects and issues that we're working on a daily basis. And so how we use our platform to deliver that, to influence the community, to influence industry, to play a part that's larger than where our comfort zone is vitally important. And so we have to stretch ourselves beyond just heads down with green eye shades on, for example, in our day jobs, but also lean into making an impact in community, whether that be through academia, social media, or a platform that you take to write and issue blogs, POVs, and or white papers. And so that's how you sort of kind of claw that back, because those are your own words, your own perspectives, your own individual thoughts and how you see the world. And most times that's valuable and is of use to others in the community as they go about executing their day jobs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, what's been interesting in my experience with IBM is, this period that we're in, I've been in consulting for 20 something years. They usually would have a marketing department that would speak on behalf of the company. And a lot of times you would hear the messages, out there, and this is way back in the day. And it's like, we don't do that. Or what like you see stuff on TV and you'd hear people talking. It's like, who are these people? What are they talking about? And the thing that's been really motivating for me being at IBM is that they really are, they've hired us to do a job, run a business, and try to push the imminence of ourselves and run that borderline of pushing the imminence of IBM, because, we're a reflection. Right. And, I think in today's modern era, it's kind of interesting because our personal imminence is important and has a value. And so it's a little bit of a gift to the company to also let them tag along. When I was at DHS, I had done an interview, I think it was for TV, and, at DHS, especially DHS, it was really focused on media stuff. I always tried to stay a little bit under the radar because I was more the business guy, not the policy person in front of it. And, but we would kind of try to push out messages that were positive, that, would be balanced, because, what the media would put out there was important for public perception. And, DHS was always starting at a negative position. So you're always, as a business guy, like, hey, here's some of the great stuff that we're doing. That's right. I remember having a staff member, and with that person, got ready, and we started to go through pushing something out in social media. And that person said, I'm not doing this. That social media is mine. It's not DHS. And it's like, very valid point, and you can't argue with that. And so, but it reminded me, I'd either lost myself years ago and need to because this was a very, and it was very innocent. It was, but it was, I used the term earlier, sobering. Somebody saying that to me, it made me think about it, and then it made me realize, I guess we do make a decision, by associating ourselves with the brand that helps us, Fortune 50, and then us being able to associate back, we're giving back to the brand. And
That's right.
And it's a kind of an informal contract that's actually not covered in the employment contract.
That's right.
But pretty valuable. Mark, kind of in closing, as we kind of get towards the end, I'm probably, one of the most important questions is, I'm involved with the MBA program at USC and is specifically working with the veterans. And within the veterans group, there's a lot of military leaders that are going and using their GI benefits to go get one last final credential, around and make it a business credential and get it from one of the best, top 20 business schools in the nation. And so they go to USC. And, one of the roles that I have there is to kind of help mentor those military folks to move into transition and to potentially move into corporate America. And one of the things that I hear a lot about, and I just, in closing, I would like to maybe have your perspective on is these are people that have led thousands of people. They've been in charge of squadrons of airplanes. They've been skippers on submarines that, billions of dollars, and they're sitting back and they're waiting, to make the transition, and they have a hard time trying to figure out how to prepare themselves to be a leader in an executive, world, or make that transition into the commercial side. And, you successfully did that. And I thought what might be interesting to veterans that are high-level leaders at any level, a leader, and you're going to make a transition into, the corporate world, what advice would you give them? Maybe it's preparation or other things to get prepared for that move.
I would say for those that are making that transition is to sit and reflect on what you have done and you have accomplished, right? Appreciate the fact that you're moving from one family to another. The military is a community within itself. You have platoon sergeants, commanders, squad leaders, squad members that are there, and you see them on a daily basis. Right. So appreciate the fact that you're transitioning from that, and that formation every morning, that duty call every morning, that reveille and retreat every day may not be there, but that's okay. You're a leader. You've been trained and honed as a leader by the time that you get out through positions of increasing responsibility and grade. You have a skill set that is essentially a natural resource to the outside. And you have to appreciate that fact as you get ready to come to the other side. Now, that requires you to sort of kind of be like you were in the military when you're getting ready to litigate a war on foreign soil that you haven't been to. But you got to go in there. The Marines do it very well. They go in organic with everything they have when they set foot. So in that sort of kind of concept, be assured that you take those same skills that you would if you're going into a foreign environment that you've never been before, and you can figure it out, right? And not only can you figure it out, but there are corporations, people, companies, organizations waiting for you to bring those assets that you have to bear for their organizations to drive success. So I would say to them, take stock of what you have. Be assured that industry and corporate America wants what you bring to the fight. Appreciate where you've come and that you're changing teams from a very, community-driven kind of aspect to another company that is community-driven, although they may not be calling you every morning saying where you're at 9 o'clock, but you're going to be fine, right? So appreciate that. Set out a plan, as we're so good and well at as military individuals. Plan it out, think it out, seek out the support of those agencies that are there to help you make that transition, and you're going to be fine. You're going to be successful. I assure any soldier, sailor, airman, Space Force individual, Marine, or Coast Guard, that companies are out here and their culture is just as good and just as powerful of any culture that you've been in inside the military, and it's a great environment to be in.
Yeah, Mark, I think your words will be very much appreciated. I think that, it's so helpful that, your story showing kind of the transitions through this. It's something that a lot of people would look at and use as a model. I know as a beneficiary, as a mentor that you provide the guidance to me, I'm very appreciative. And thanks again for coming out and being on the show and being with me and sharing all that with our listeners. I really have enjoyed it, Mark. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Troy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.